in order to find a place of refuge should this crisis hit. But the Bible has said everything will be destroyed. Everything will be destroyed. So, even the world out there know that something is happening. What else? What else? Is that all that we are seeing in the world? The answer is no. There is also this momentum which is also rising. And what is this? The possibility of a civil war. So we've looked at the international world war which is likely to occur upon the earth. And internally, we are also seeing elements of a civil war. And before we look at that, let's read this quote. God does not design that men shall appropriate all that the earth produces for their own selfish purposes. He calls upon them to bring their tithe and offering into his stores, that there may be meat in his house. In India, China, Russia, and the cities of America, thousands of men and women are dying of starvation. The moneyed men, because they have the power, control the market. They purchase at low rates all they can obtain and then sell at greatly increased price. Now listen, this means starvation to the poorer classes and will result in a civil war. The spirit of prophecy has made it very clear that we are likely to see civil wars in countries just prior to the second advent of Christ. Now, why is this so important? She ends this way. There will be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. So this civil wars is so much connected to the time of trouble which is to fall upon the earth. And so in this month April, there will be the release of a movie called Civil War. Let's watch the trailer.
19 states have seceded.
The United States Army ramps up activity.
The White House issued warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
Let me know if you want to try anything on.
Are you guys aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America?
We just try to stay out. With what we see on the news, seems like it's for the best.
Citizens of America.
The so-called Western forces of Texas and California
Have suffered a very great defeat at the hands of the United States military.
Mr. President, do you regret the use of airstrikes against American citizens?
We're moving to D.C. today.
We need to go down there.
They shoot journalists on sight in the Capitol. Every instinct in me says this is death.
Flooded.
Every time I survived a war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here. What? Well, you're American, okay?
Okay. What kind of American are you? You don't know?
The Western forces will reach the White House on July 4th.
Oh my God.
Get in the car! Get in the car!
Move, move, move!
You're gonna hang back.
I'm not hanging back.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America.
Mr. President, you say you want to secure the border. Texas has secured it. Leave it alone. We don't need you down here.
Governor Greg Abbott said in an interview Friday that Texas is prepared for any conflict between state and federal authorities.
There are signs the Biden administration may be backing down from a standoff between the state of Texas and the feds at the southern border.
Texas officials say they will not comply with a deadline tonight to allow Border Patrol access to Shelby Park in Eagle Pass. And Border Patrol agents say for now there are no plans to remove razor wire, even though a court ruling allows agents to do so. Meanwhile, more Republican states say they will send National Guard resources to the border.
Along the border in Eagle Pass, it appears Texas is in charge, and some want it to stay that way.
Mr. President, you say you want to secure the border. Texas has secured it. Leave it alone. We don't need you down here.
A Friday deadline that the federal government set for the state to let federal agents access a park in Eagle Pass will apparently pass with no changes. The state took control of the high crossing area earlier this month, even though the feds said they needed it to do their job. A court ruling Monday also paved the way for the feds to take down razor wire, but Texas has since added more. It prompted some calls for the federal government to take over the Texas Guard.
And I would remind everyone that the circumstances under which the federal government can mobilize a state's National Guard are outlined in the law, right? So that I'll leave that there, but I'm just not going to get into speculations on any actions the president's going to take at this time.
Governor Greg Abbott said in an interview Friday that Texas is prepared for any conflict between state and federal authorities.
All we can do is be as prepared as possible, deploy as many people as possible, do as much as possible to put up more border barriers and deny illegal entry. And our head is down. We're working hard, regardless of what the Biden administration is doing.
Meanwhile, more Republicans appear to be souring on a congressional border security deal. Speaker Mike Johnson told colleagues Friday leaked details about the plan lead him to believe the plan would be dead on arrival in the House. It comes after former President Donald Trump said a border deal now would be a gift to Democrats. Immigration is a top issue for voters, but some Republicans still want to see action sooner.
I think they should try to get something done. That's my personal opinion. But regardless of whether they do or not, there's actions that the president can take right now to help the governor instead of working against him.
But what is the president's plan? This is happening just weeks after 300,000 people came into this country over the southern border illegally. The razor wire officials down there think was keeping some of them out, and you guys just sued and won to remove it
on behalf of the Border Patrol, who needed to have better access to it. Look, let me go back to your other question, and I know I'm running short on time, so I won't filibuster here. But what's the plan? Please look at the stuff we've put forward. The immigration reform legislation that the president put forward on day one. The work we're doing in the region. Just last week we had Mexican officials here to talk about how together we have and will continue to try to stem the flow of migrants. You mentioned the numbers. No question there's a lot of people trying to make that journey, but it's not just to the United States, it's to other countries in the world, in the region. We're seeing historic movement. Not since World War II have we seen this many people on the move in this hemisphere. And the Mexicans are really stepping up and trying to do more on their southern border to keep that flow going north lower. And we have seen in recent weeks some success at that. The idea that we don't have a plan or a strategy or we're not taking this seriously is just not borne out by the facts. And, again, if the folks on the House Republican side are serious about border security, and they claim they are, then they should act on the supplemental request and, let's negotiate this in good faith. The president has said he's willing to make compromises. He's willing to negotiate in good faith. So let's have that discussion.
The tensions led the Border Patrol Union to issue a statement Friday, saying in part, rank-and-file Border Patrol agents are not going to start arresting Texas National Guard members for following their lawful orders. That's fake news.
Tensions between Texas and the Biden administration have reached a boiling point as the Lone Star State continues to defy an emergency injunction from the Supreme Court and block federal border agents into the state to cut razor wire it's been installing over the past few weeks. 25 other states have signed a letter pledging to support Texas as it installs razor wire on the southern border, with some sending members of their own state and National Guard to assist with the installation process. They wrote, "We stand in solidarity with our fellow Governor Greg Abbott and the state of Texas in utilizing every tool and strategy, including razor wire fences, to secure the border. We do it in part because the Biden administration is refusing to enforce immigration laws already on the books and is illegally allowing mass parole across America of migrants who entered our country illegally.
But it wasn't just Republicans who backed Abbott's decision to buck the feds. Presidential hopeful RFK Jr. wrote, "Texas is right. Biden's failure to secure the border leaves states no choice but to take matters into their own hands. As president, I will end this humanitarian crisis once and for all. I will secure the border and destroy the business model of the drug cartels. A country without borders is not a country at all."
Apart from the wars, the likelihood of a third world war, the likelihood of civil wars, what else? The World Health Organization has warned us of the likelihood of the deadliest pandemic, which is 20 times deadlier than the COVID pandemic, called disease X. They have warned the world of the likelihood of this pandemic.
We've talked about economic slowdown, we've talked about wars. Both inflict pain. But do you know what can be worse? A pandemic. Our generation has seen it firsthand. The Wuhan virus pandemic. The whole world was hit. More than 770 million people were infected. 6.9 million of them died. It was horrible. Turns out it was just a trailer. The next one will be much worse, and it is coming. I know it sounds ominous, but I'm not the one saying this. Experts are. They say the next big pandemic is coming. It will be caused by what they call disease X. And no, Elon Musk has nothing to do with this. The name disease X was adopted by the World Health Organization back in 2018. The name is hypothetical. It stands for a disease caused by an unknown microbe, like the variable X. It could be anything. A flu, the Wuhan virus, or a souped-up ancient killer making a comeback like typhoid or tuberculosis. It could spill over from one species to another, go to humans from a pig, a bat, a chicken, or even a hamster. It could come out of a fur farm in the UK or a pig farm in Mexico. It could be birthed in a disturbed forest or a weapons lab in Algeria. It may arrive decades later or tomorrow. And that's some high-stakes confusion. Every few weeks, they come up with a new report on this disease X. It makes dire predictions. But honestly, it offers nothing concrete. It's infuriating. If they don't know anything for sure, why bother at all? All they can say with some certainty is this: another pandemic is inevitable. With worsening climate change and denser human and animal populations, disease X is coming. Many experts have said this. The latest one is Dame Kate Bingham. She chaired the UK's vaccine task force. She says the next pandemic could be 20 times deadlier than the one caused by Wuhan virus. It could take 50 million lives. Now, reports say scientists have identified 25 virus families so far. 25 families, each family has thousands of viruses within it. But there are still millions of others yet to be discovered. So fear of the unknown persists. Do you know what makes it worse? The lack of clarity over pandemic response. What do you do when it hits us? No one knows how to deal with the next outbreak. It's been 3 years since the Wuhan virus pandemic began, yet many aspects of the best response remain unsettled. When a new virus spreads quickly, with no warning, there is little information. But at that time, hard policy decisions have to be made, and they must be made quickly. There are many questions. Should schools be closed? Should there be a mask mandate? Should there be international travel bans? If a safe and effective vaccine becomes available, should it be mandated? Should it be compulsory? Health experts and policymakers have debated these questions, but they have not reached a conclusion. There is no collective response or resolve to devise a plan. About 2 years ago, countries agreed to develop what they called a pandemic treaty, like a global agreement. A treaty that would list the ideal response to future diseases, to help with preparation and prevention. That was the plan. But 2 years and counting, there is no such treaty. This year, the United Nations became desperate. At the General Assembly, they took matters in their own hands. The UN called for a high-level pandemic meeting. It was held in September, and a document was released. Guess what it said? Any obligations stated for the governments became recommendations. Do you know who was given the lion's share of responsibility here? The World Health Organization, the one that dragged its feet and praised China in the last pandemic. They are in charge again. And all of this offers little hope. It shows that pandemic amnesia has set in. The sense of urgency has been replaced by complacency. Public health systems were exposed the last time. They were unprepared. They could not cope. And policymakers are showing no intent to fix this. With no plan in place, they will scramble to solve the next crisis.
What else? So, warfare, civil war, disease outbreak, and what else? Protests across the world by farmers. Let's watch how farmers are protesting across Europe. Let's watch that one too.
The farmers have had it. They've taken to the streets across Europe, protesting cuts to tax breaks, competition from cheaper imports, onerous environmental regulations, and sprawling bureaucracy. The spark came from Germany, where the government rolled back agricultural diesel subsidies. If that sounds familiar, that's because in 2018 it was a seemingly innocuous fuel tax that unleashed the Gilets jaunes across France. France is the biggest agricultural producer in Europe, worth about 100 billion euros every year, but still imports about 50% of its fruits and vegetables. In Germany, agriculture employs less than 1 million people, but it accounts for more than half of the nation's land use. In Germany, a partial backtrack by the government wasn't enough. Nor in France. Even the EU has had to flinch. What makes it even harder for politicians is the overwhelming support for farmers by the broader population.
Now we are building up, and so we would want to create an image in our eyes for us to realize the crisis in almost every single field and how things are breaking down gradually right before our eyes, for us to realize that we are just on the verge of the time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. We are just on the brink of that prophecy being fulfilled. Now, what else is the world experiencing? The Ecocide laws, an attempt to criminalize any attempt to destroy nature's blessings, that is the climate. So this whole climate agenda, we see an attempt to even criminalize farming and fishing. Let's hear him speak at the World Economic Forum on these ecocide laws which are being pushed out there in the world. Let's watch it.
Stop Ecocide is a campaign about changing international law and ultimately changing history. Destroying the planet is currently permitted. That is how ecosystems are being destroyed every day by dangerous industrial activity, exacerbating climate emergency and destroying our soils, our forests, our rivers, the land and the earth we love. This is ecocide, and we believe it should be an international crime alongside war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity. This is surprisingly achievable. At the International Criminal Court, any member state can table an amendment to add the crime of ecocide. And it doesn't have to be a big oil state, like, for example, the UK, where our campaign started. It could be, if we were being really revolutionary. But the people that have the real incentive to do this and to do it quickly are small islands who are already feeling the sharp end of climate change. They're already going underwater. We're working directly with those small Pacific islands to take forward this law. They have the legal ability already, but they don't have the expertise and the practical support, and that is what our campaign can give them. Usually it's corporations that fund laws. They have the money, they have the power and influence, they can take the right people to dinner, they can speak to all the politicians, they can lobby for the laws that they want that support their industry. This campaign does something very different. We're inviting you, the people, us, to fund a law that we want, to protect the earth that we love. We believe there's nothing more powerful that you can do with 2 minutes and a $5. Join us and become an earth protector today.
Now, what is it about it that is so necessary that we understand? The world is coming up against individual farms, and it is such a contrast to what we have been told to do. As the world is clamping down small gardens, God has also told us to prepare our gardens. What a contrast. We'll talk about that in detail in our subsequent discussion. With this whole climate thing and an attempt to criminalize it called ecocide, we have genocide, we have homicide, we have suicide, and now we have ecocide. This climate agenda, is it founded upon truth or deception? So my question to us is this: if there is the likelihood of a world war, if there is the likelihood of civil wars, if there is the likelihood of outbreak of diseases across the world. In our previous discussion, we talked about blackouts, total darkness everywhere. In our previous discussion, we talked about the cyber attacks. If all these things, there's the likelihood of these being unleashed upon the world, the question is that, are we prepared for what is coming upon the earth? Are we really prepared for what is coming upon the earth? So I end with this quote. In 8 Testimonies, page 315, paragraph 2, Ellen White says, a storm is coming, relentless in its fury. Are we prepared to meet it? May God help us to prepare. In our subsequent discussions, we are going to situate it with what we have to do. In other words, the preparation that needs to be done as far as God's people are concerned. May we not be afraid, because as I initially read, the angels are holding the 4 winds of strife, because there's a work that needs to be done. But before that work is done, a preparation is to be made. And we are going to talk about that in our subsequent discussions. May God help us. In Jesus' name. Amen.